gonna get this right from the beginning! That's right.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the couples from old Hollywood movies who definitely aren't together anymore.
Almost gives him a feeling he wasn't wanted.
Oh, now look, Junior, that's what divorces are for.
Number 10. Eliza Doolittle and Henry Higgins, My Fair Lady. Henry Higgins may have grown accustomed to Eliza Doolittle's face, but we can't imagine that sense of comfort is going to last too long for either of them.
Here are your slippers. There! And there! Take your slippers and may you never have a day's luck with them.
The romance between Eliza and Professor Higgins in My Fair Lady is slight, to say the least. Higgins essentially spends the whole time complaining about how uncouth Eliza is, and she takes it until she just can't anymore.
As they raise their rifles, all shot, ready, aim, fire! Oh, ha, ha, Henry Higgins, down you go, Henry Higgins!
And yet, despite everything, Eliza comes back to Higgins at the end. You can argue about whether or not she comes back for romance, but even if it's just friendship she's after, we're willing to bet she'll tire of Higgins' attitude in the end.
You talk about me as though I was a motor bus.
So you are a motor bus, all bounce and go and no consideration for anybody. But I can get along without you. Don't you think I can?
Number 9. Gene Harrington and Charles Pike, The Lady Eve. What do you get when you add a con artist with a snake expert? A match made in heaven. Or maybe not.
You thought you were having a lot of fun with me, didn't you?
I was having a lot of fun with you, Hopsy. More fun than I've ever had with anybody.
The Lady Eve is one of the greatest screwball comedies of the 1940s, but in the real world, a relationship built on this much trickery would never last. The con artist Gene Harrington meets the rich Charles Pike and falls in love with him for real.
One of us has to think and try and keep things clear. Maybe I can do that better than you can.
Convinced she's only after the money, Charles scorns her. So Gene pretends to be the very wealthy Lady Eve as a way to get Charles back. Obviously, the two end up in love, but with all this lying going around, we're not sure how long this one will last.
I was just going to say I could imagine life with you being a series of ups and downs, lights and shadows.
Number 8. Nina Yakushova and Leon Daggu, Ninochka.
Must you flirt?
Well, I don't have to, but I find it natural.
Suppress it.
We understand why Hollywood might want to make an opposites-attract-style romantic comedy about Soviets in 1939. But in reality, we doubt Greta Garbo and Melvyn Douglas's characters would have spared a glance at each other.
You are something we do not have in Russia.
Thank you.
That's why I believe in the future of my country.
Yeah.
Ninochka tells the story of the flirty and charming Count Leon Daggu and the stern Nina Yakushova, better known as Ninochka. The two don't agree on anything and have completely different values from one another. Yet somehow they end up together at the end. Apparently, somebody being able to make you laugh can change your whole outlook on life.
They aren't funny. They're silly. They're stupid. And still I laugh at them.
Number 7. Steve Sherman and Samantha Blake, A New Kind of Love. At the beginning of Melville Shavelson's A New Kind of Love, Steve Sherman mistakes Samantha Blake for a man. This apparently is a harbinger of love to come.
And the next time you're in New York, I suggest you call El Dorado 53598. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. You need help.
After this initial meeting, the two dislike each other pretty intensely. Then, all of a sudden, Sam decides she wants to completely change her look and try to attract a man. After a makeover, she runs into the womanizing Steve again. This time, he mistakes her for a sex worker.
Let me understand. You have paid my, my manager $100 an hour for me?
Yep. 2 solid hours. I plan to use every minute of it.
Ah, the wonders of love. Somehow, Sam and Steve end up together. But we're sure their apparent distaste for literally everything about each other will come between them at some point.
No, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work because it's always gonna be a joke to you. It's gonna be a soccer match or a football game. You probably even write a column about our wedding night.
Number 6. Bob Weston and Helen Brown, Sex and the Single Girl. When it comes to 1960s sex comedies, it doesn't get much funnier than Sex and the Single Girl. But the outlandish romance between Bob Weston and Helen Brown would look much different in real life, no matter how much chemistry Natalie Wood and Tony Curtis have.
See? We're holding hands and nothing is happening.
Something is happening.
When Bob's magazine publishes an article about sex therapist Helen, discrediting her as a virgin, she starts to lose business. Bob decides to get to the bottom of Helen's sex life by impersonating his best friend with marriage problems and going to her for an appointment.
You know in your book, Dr. Brown, where you write about single girls ought to get together with married men for a while? Well, I'm a married man and you're a single girl, and I thought that maybe you and me, I told you it was going to be dirty.
A comedy of errors ensues, and it's quite a fun one. But in real life, Helen would be out there in a heartbeat once she found out the truth.
Mrs. Broderick, your husband is a very sick man.
Number 5, Brad Allen and Jan Morrow, Pillow Talk. Listen, we're all a sucker for Rock Hudson's good looks, but in Pillow Talk, even those can't really save his character.
Dirty line, a horrible little man.
He sure isn't very well mannered.
Mannered? He isn't even worth talking about.
In the film, Hudson and Doris Day play Brad and Jan, 2 neighbors who share a telephone line. Brad's constant schmoozing on the phone with different women causes Jan to file a complaint about him.
So I overlap by a few measly minutes. What am I supposed to do when somebody calls me? Be as rude as you are?
Have you anything else to say?
Yes. Get off my back, lady.
To get back at Jan, Brad masquerades as a Texas rancher and tries to get her to fall in love with him. The only problem? He starts to fall in love with her, too. The lies in this one are just a little too obvious to be cute. Even at the end when they get married, they don't really seem to like each other all that much.
Get your clothes on.
You get out of here!
We're going to my apartment.
I've seen it!
You'll see it again. Now put your clothes on.
I won't!
Number 4, Mr. and Mrs. Dewinter, Rebecca.
Her shadow has been between us all the time, keeping us from one another.
So, you just found out that your new husband might have murdered his first wife. What's a gal to do? This is exactly the predicament the new Mrs. Dewinter finds herself in Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. When Mrs. Dewinter moves in with her new husband, plenty of strange things begin to happen, all centering around Mr. Dewinter's first wife, the now dead Rebecca.
She won't come back, will she? You said so.
Who, Ben? What do you mean?
The other one.
When Rebecca's body is suddenly discovered, Mr. Dewinter confesses that Rebecca died during a lover's quarrel when she fell and hit her head. But we're not really left with any satisfying answer as to if that's true. Whether Mr. Dewinter is lying or not, we think possible murder is sure to put this couple on the rocks.
It's gone forever. That funny, young, lost look I loved won't ever come back.
Number 3, Beauregard Decker and Cherie, Bus Stop. In 1956, a movie like Bus Stop could be billed as a romantic comedy and nobody would bat an eye. But looking back at the love story in question today, we think this movie would work better as a horror film.
I'm sorry to wake you, but could you help me? What's the matter? I'm being abducted.
The film follows an annoying cowboy named Beauregard Decker who falls in love with a woman named Cherie that he meets at a nightclub. For the rest of the film, Beauregard makes attempts to force Cherie to marry him, including essentially kidnapping her to take her back to Montana.
Oh, shut up! I'll make you a good husband. You'll have nothing to be sorry about.
Finally, Beauregard ends up agreeing to let Cherie go. Somehow, this bare minimum act of decency convinces her to stay. We're willing to bet Beauregard hasn't really changed.
Where was you brought up, in a barn?
That's right, he was.
Number 2, T.R. Devlin and Alicia Huberman, Notorious.
You look all mashed up. Must have been quite an evening.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, if you want to play that way, go on, have fun. No reason why you shouldn't.
That's right.
Picture this. Your father is a Nazi war criminal. You fall in love with an American agent who you think sees the good in you, despite your reputation as a bit of a loose woman. Then, said American agent recruits you to seduce another Nazi, putting you in danger and hating you for it all at the same time. This is what happens between Alicia Huberman and T.R. Devlin in Notorious.
It's no fun then.
Too late for that now, isn't it?
Now, by the end of the film, Devlin has come to Alicia's rescue as she's slowly poisoned to death by said Nazi. He might get her out and he might profess his love, but we would just love to see the conversation between them after Alicia finally comes to her senses.
How do you feel?
A bit dizzy.
Take some deep breaths.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are some honorable mentions. Walter Burns and Hildy Johnson, His Girl Friday. They got divorced once and we bet they'll do it again.
I am fond of you, you know.
Hello, girl.
I often wish you weren't such a stinker.
Brick and Maggie Paulette, cat on a hot tin roof. Alcohol and betrayal are never a good recipe for a marriage.
It's got to be told.
But I don't want to hear it.
It's got to be told, and you never let me tell it.
Peter Warren and Ellie Andrews. It happened one night. Lovers on the run generally don't stay together.
It's all a matter of knowing how to hail them.
Oh, and you're an expert, I suppose.
Expert. I'm going to write a book about it. Call it The Hitchhiker's Hail.
There's no end to your accomplishments, isn't there?
Clara Novak and Alfred Kralik. The shop around the corner. They hated each other for so long. Will their letter writing change that?
Are you deliberately trying to spoil my evening? Why do you want to do me harm? Why do you hate me so?
I don't hate you.
Oh, I suppose you love me.
Oh, why should I? What have you done to make me love you?
Well, I don't want you to love me.
I don't.
Sugarcane and Joe. Some like it hot. Lying about one's identity does tend to pose some issues.
You don't want me, Sugar. I'm a liar and a phony, a saxophone player, one of those no-good-nicks you keep running away from.
I know, every time.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Holly Golightly and Paul Varjak. Breakfast at Tiffanys.
I'd marry you for your money in a minute. Would you marry me for my money?
In a minute.
So I guess it's pretty lucky neither of us is rich, huh?
A runaway schemer and a writer with a little side hustle. What could go wrong? Holly Golightly and Paul Varjak spend the majority of Breakfast at Tiffanys either flirting with or pining after other people and or lying about who they are to each other. For the majority of the film, Paul has feelings for Holly, but she is all the time scheming about trying to marry someone else.
But it turns out not only is he handsome and wildly rich, he's absolutely cuckoo for me.
You're crazy.
What, do you think you own me?
That's exactly what I think.
I know, that's what everybody always thinks, but everybody happens to be wrong.
There's not a lot of tension here. When Paul finally confesses to her at the end of the movie, she even hesitates before running after him. The film is iconic for a lot of reasons, but the further we get away from it, the relationship between Holly and Paul certainly isn't one of them.
I love you. You belong to me.
No, people don't belong to people.
Of course they do.
I'm not gonna let anyone put me in a cage.
If we missed any of your favorite couples not long for this world, let us know in the comments below.
Well, that makes it necessary for me to drop back again. Matthew 5:39. Don't bother looking it up. It's the bit about the other cheek.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.